Is there a cool update when it comes to the VeChain? Now, even though nothing I say is financial advice, what do I mean by this? VeChain not too long ago announced how they said basically in a post on X how a big thanks to KuCoin for supporting their upcoming Hayabusa upgrade. Now, people may be thinking, okay, what is Hayabusa? Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about the Suzuki Hayabusa, which is a cool motorcycle in my opinion. I think it looks awesome, even though I don't use motorcycles, but I'm saying I like, seeing that. But at the same time, this right here is in regards to VeChain, right? Because we're talking about, hypothetical improvements, basically, even though some people may argue that it's not that massive, but there are some slight differences in my perspective in terms of kind of like, VET, which is the native token of VeChain, and then sort of the tokenomics and all this. But again, basically, a lot of my friends out there, they won't really care about the difference. But at the same time, it's kind of like the thought that counts because the thing is, when it comes to, again, this quote unquote Hayabusa upgrade, did a lot of people really ask for it? Nah, I don't think that many really, at least that I know. But then the thing is, why is VeChain caring about this type of stuff? Well, I think it's because they care about the project, unlike some other projects out there, which I feel like the team doesn't really care anymore. Which, they have their reasons because, of course, the altcoin space isn't doing the best. Bitcoin's around 85 grand and all this type of stuff. Of course, like sometimes as a project, how can they sometimes stay motivated at a time like this? But then at the same time, my point of view is that I like seeing the enthusiasm, right, when it comes to VeChain because, you know, this is a pretty massive exchange, at the grand scheme of things when it comes to KuCoin. And even they're supporting the upcoming upgrade when it comes to Hayabusa. So yeah, I find that pretty cool. Now, at the same time, though, my point of view is that, yeah, sure. I mean, when it comes to something like VeChain, it hasn't really done the best at all, actually, during this cycle, even despite actually being still top 65 in terms of market cap within this space. But I'm just saying, when I take a look at, let's say, something like VET, again, right? VeChain's primary native token. As of right now, it's around a penny, or should I say around 1 cent. Which, I mean, it could be viewed as in two ways. In one instance, I could hypothetically say, okay, it's not looking the best, but at the same time, also, on the flip side, I can take a look at it and say, okay, if my intention is to dollar cost average, and again, if my intention is to do that, I don't know why I would necessarily complain too much, because when I take a look at, like, again, around 1 cent, right? When was the last time I saw that? Basically, with what I'm seeing right now when it comes to VET, this 1 cent range is like 2020 levels, which is, again, I mean, there's two ways to take a look at it, right? But again, if I'm able to basically dollar cost average, even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, at VET back in 2020 levels, basically, around that range, am I going to be complaining about that? Again, I don't think I will be, actually. Now, at the same time, though, people may be thinking, okay, well, is there going to be an altcoin season during the cycle? Now, I can't control that, right? But my point of view is this. Like, I saw VET not too long ago, for instance, back in 2024 in December, which is, basically around a year ago at this point, but the market cap at that point was around 5 billion, right? And then when we take a look at the price when it comes to VET at that point in time, it was around like 7 cents, almost 8 cents actually. So VET right now around 1 cent. Not too long ago, nearly 8 cents. Like for instance, if I take a look at Bitcoin, right? If it goes to 300 grand, Bitcoin even as of right now is not over 4 times lower than that, right? I take a look at something like, for instance, in the case of Ethereum, is it over 5 times lower than 10 grand? No, actually, even as of right now. But I'm just saying, despite the pullback when it comes to Ethereum. When I take a look at VET again, it's down by a lot, basically, in the grand scheme of things. But if it just went back to December 2024 levels, again, we're on 1 cent right now. That's nearly around 8 cents at that point, right? Back then. It doesn't have to do uncharted sort of levels, in my perspective, like uncharted territory type of moves in order to hypothetically kind of just what, go back to around 7.5 cents, give or take, right? Nearly 8 cents. VET right now is over 6 times lower than that. In order for something like, again, Bitcoin to do for whatever reason, like let's say it needs to, like, 300 grand, that's not over 6x away, but that's just my perspective. However, even besides that point, when I take a look at VET, what I find pretty surprising to me is that, even despite this pullback, is that the project still seems to not really care, which actually I don't think is a bad thing because it seems like they're kind of indifferent to what's going on with the price, but then they're more so focusing on the fundamentals when it comes to VeChain. Some other projects out there, if the price ain't doing good, they're not really going to be doing anything. That's just my point of view, at least from what I can see, or should I say observe, when it comes to that specific situation in some cases. But the thing is, when it comes to VeChain, I still like their core focus, right? Because some people might be thinking, oh, VeChain's not necessarily focused on the most interesting thing out there. And I'll agree with that. Because being primarily focused on supply chain management, it's not such a cool kind of market, in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, did I enter this space to be focused on projects that are focused on supply chain management? Did I think that was a cool market? No, and I still don't think it's cool. And I didn't enter this space for VeChain, right? That was not my objective, but I found VeChain along the way. That's just my point of view. Now, in the grand scheme of things, though, why don't I mind? Well, it's because if I take a look at it, sure, I mean, supply chain management isn't the most cool or interesting market out there in my perspective, but at least it is something that has been known for many decades before, and if let's say it's known for many decades later, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. Like for instance, it's not a market that is tied to like the trend. You know what I mean? It's just more so a market that's always kind of there. So then I don't necessarily find it such a bad thing personally for me. Now also on top of that though, I mean, 30 cents, VET is around 25 times lower than that. The pullback's been pretty extensive, but at the same time, like if we consider just back in, December of 2024, nearly 8 cents, like 30 cents. Like at that point, right? To me, it didn't seem like it was way too far off in my perspective. That's just the way to take a look at it. However, not to mention, when I take a look at something like the idea of hypothetically 30 cents, at that point, market cap would be around 26 billion considering current circulating supply. Like, I don't know if that's uncharted territory because we've seen like even BNB back in 2021 exceed a market cap of over 100 billion, which granted BNB reached a new all-time high during this cycle, which clearly VET did not, but I'm just saying. When it comes to BNB, even years ago, a market cap was above 100 billion. That's just my thought process when it comes to this. So, yeah, when I take a look at VeChain, I mean, I just haven't given up. That's my point of view. I am still a fan, I would say, when it comes to the project because I still like what they're doing kind of in partnerships and stuff like that. Like, for instance, the UFC partnership I think is pretty impressive considering how, if we take a look at VET, right? Market cap right now is around 1 billion. Like, it's not a top 10 project by any means. It's not even top 20, not top 30, not even top 50 currently. And we're still seeing pretty okay partnerships in my perspective. That's not, I think, sometimes such an easy task to do for a project of this size. How do they do it? I have no idea. But still, it's pretty impressive in my perspective. At the same time, I take a look at what, VeChain did with PowerSlap. So, again, they're still at least doing something. I take a look at historically what they did with, H&M, BMW, and all this. So, again, when I take a look at VeChain, I mean, their partnerships historically has been pretty kind of, I think, impressive because I even saw what they did with like PricewaterhouseCoopers and Deloitte. So yeah, I mean, just overall, when I take a look at something on VeChain, I just haven't given up, but I just want to talk about this update real quick because, I mean, not a lot of people thought that KuCoin would even care about something like the quote-unquote Hayabusa upgrade, right? Considering how VeChain's not even a top 50 project right now, but I'm just saying it's still pretty cool nonetheless. And yeah, I find it pretty interesting that VeChain still cares about these minute details, which a lot of people, including myself, didn't even really think about or ask for. But at the same time, I like the effort. That's the way you take a look at it. It's kind of like the thought that counts, right? I mean, sometimes that's just my point of view. However, I want to say thank you for watching. even though I'll never be able to know when there's going to be an altcoin season, I am still staying patient, holding, and just waiting. However, I hope you all have a nice day. It's Willie the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.